My assistant, who I trained for 2 years, was using the client system to steal my best clients while I was training her. I found out when a client called confused. What I found was a betrayal with surgical precision. There are people you invest in a specific way. That is not only the technical training any company gives any employee, but the time of your own time, access to how you think, to how you manage the most important relationships in your work, to the shortcuts that took you years to learn. That investment has a name. It is called mentorship. And when the person you invested in uses exactly what you taught them to build something at your expense, the harm is of a specific kind that does not have a completely adequate name. It is not just betrayal. It is precise betrayal, built with the tools you yourself gave them. My name is Renata. I am 38 years old. I am corporate sales manager at a technology solutions company for mid-sized businesses, and I have spent 9 years at this organization, of which the last 4 I have been responsible for the most important client portfolio. My assistant's name was Gabriella. She was 26 years old. She had been with the company for 2 years, both of them under my direct supervision. I had interviewed her. I had selected her. I had trained her in everything I knew about corporate client management. I had given her access to the client system because it was necessary for her to do her job well. I had introduced her to the most important clients in meetings where she took notes and learned. I had explained what each client values, what their sensitive points are, what language to use with each one. That information I had given her was exactly what she had used to contact them independently. The client who called was named Don Aurelio. He had been with the company for 7 years. He was the technology director of a regional distribution chain. He was the kind of client the industry calls a relationship client because he not only buys the service but trusts the person who manages it. He called me on a Wednesday at noon with the tone of someone who does not want to create problems, but who needs to understand what is happening. He told me Gabriella had contacted him the previous week, that she had told him she was starting her own consulting firm, that she had offered to continue working with him directly, that the proposal included a lower monthly fee than what he currently paid, that she already knew all his processes and needs, that the service would be the same or better. Don Aurelio told me he had not accepted, that he had wanted to call me first, that he did not know whether I was aware or whether this was something the company had authorized. I thanked Don Aurelio for his call. I told him it was not something the company had authorized, that I was going to investigate and would call him back within 48 hours. I hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment. It was not immediate anger. It was the specific feeling of someone who has just heard something and is in real time calculating the extent of what they heard. If Gabriella had contacted Don Aurelio, the question was not whether she had contacted others. The question was how many. I did not go directly to Gabriella. What I did was what I had learned to do when something important needed to be understood in its entirety before being confronted. I went to the systems area. I asked the systems manager for an access report to the client system with Gabriella's profile over the last 6 months. I told him it was for an internal process audit. I did not say more. The report arrived in 2 hours. What I found in the report was what I did not want to find, but already suspected. In the last 4 months, Gabriella had had accesses to the client system outside working hours. Nights, weekends, at times that did not correspond to any task I had assigned her. The records showed the specific files she had consulted. 17 clients. 17 of the 22 most important clients in my portfolio, with repeated accesses in several cases. The pattern was not of someone reviewing work information. It was of someone studying files, extracting information, preparing something. I searched for Don Aurelio's personal cell phone number in the system. It was there. I searched for the numbers of the other 16 clients whose files had been consulted outside working hours. All of them were in the system. Gabriella had had access to the personal contact details of 17 clients. Before making any additional move, I called the general director. Her name was Valentina, and she had been with the company for 12 years. I presented what I had. The access report. Don Aurelio's call. The connection between the two. Valentina listened. She asked whether I had evidence she had contacted other clients besides Don Aurelio. I told her not yet, that the access pattern suggested she had prepared the ground to do so, that we needed to know the extent before acting. Valentina told me she authorized me to contact the remaining 16 clients directly. Then in the meantime, Gabriella would be preventively suspended with blocked access. I spent the following 2 days calling the 16 clients with a consistent message that I was calling to personally follow up on their account, that I had become aware of an unauthorized contact from a former employee, that I wanted to verify whether they had received any communication and answer any questions they had. Of the 16, 7 had been contacted by Gabriella, had received formal proposals with prices and service terms. 3 had received introductory messages establishing the possibility of a future conversation. 9 had not been contacted yet, probably because Don Aurelio's process had led him to call me before Gabriella completed her list. The conversation with Gabriella occurred with Valentina and the company's labor attorney present. Gabriella arrived knowing something had happened because her accesses had been blocked without explanation. When we presented her with the access report and the information about client contacts, she did not deny it. What she did was something I did not expect. She looked at me directly. She told me she had learned everything she knew from me, that she had seen how I managed client relationships, that she had understood that that knowledge had value, that she had decided to use it. I asked her whether at any point she had thought about what that did to me. She told me yes, that she had thought I had enough years of experience to rebuild what I lost, that she was just starting out, that she had not seen another way to start than by using what she already knew. That answer was the hardest to process of the entire situation. Not because it was justified. It was not. But because it was honest in a way that revealed something about how Gabriella had conceptualized what she had done. Not as theft, as entrepreneurship, as using available tools to advance, without calculating that those tools were not hers. That the information about the clients belonged to the company. That the years of relationship I had built with those clients were not transferable. That the clients she had contacted had built that relationship with me, not with her. That confusion between what is yours and what you use in your work is not innocent. But it is not identical to that of someone who plans to steal with full awareness of what they are doing. It was both things at the same time. And that was the hardest thing to name. Gabriella was let go that day. Legal proceedings were initiated for unauthorized use of confidential client information. The 4 clients who had received formal proposals were personally attended by me with complete information about what had happened. None changed providers. 3 of the 7 who had been contacted expressed displeasure with the situation, but maintained a relationship with the company. 1 said I had handled it with the transparency he expected from someone trustworthy. That comment mattered more than I expected. What I implemented afterward was concrete. Client system accesses with restricted hours and automatic alerts for out-of-hours access. Separation of information levels in the system. Personal client contact data accessible only to account managers. Explicit training for assistants on what system information is confidential and what the consequences of unauthorized use are. Biannual review of system access patterns by systems and internal audit. What cost me most to process was not the damage to the client portfolio. It was the backward review of how I had trained Gabriella. Had there been signs I had ignored? The uncomfortable answer was that there had been conversations where Gabriella had asked things about the commission structure and about how clients paid that at the time I had interpreted as professional curiosity. That they had been questions more specific about the business than someone in an assistant role would normally ask. That I had not dug deeper, because it had seemed to me that her interest was a sign of potential. That the same interest that had made me believe she was a promising employee was the one that had been building the plan. That was the hardest part. Not what Gabriella had done. The way in which what I had interpreted as strength had been exactly what had allowed the plan to work for 4 months. What I want you to take from this story has very practical parts for anyone who works with client information or in relationship management positions. The first, access to client information is a work privilege, not a property of whoever uses it. That distinction needs to be explicit in contracts, in training, and in the culture of any organization where that information has value. The second, access patterns to sensitive information systems can reveal irregular conduct before it produces harm. Periodic audits of those patterns are not bureaucracy. They're the difference between detecting something in time and discovering it when the damage is already done. The third, when you train someone in everything you know about your work, you are creating value in that person. That value is an asset of the company and the employment relationship, not of the person independently. Being explicit about that from the beginning of any training relationship is not distrust. It is clarity about what belongs to whom. If this story impacted you, comment. Do you believe there's a clear line between learning from someone at work and using that learning in ways that harm whoever taught you? Or do you think that line is ambiguous when someone decides to become an entrepreneur? Like if you believe companies should have more explicit controls on the use of client information by their employees. Subscribe for more real stories. Share with someone who manages client relationships or who has people in their charge with access to sensitive information. Practical tip. If you have people on your team with access to client systems, configure automatic alerts for access outside working hours. That configuration takes less than an hour and can detect exactly the type of pattern described in this story before it produces consequences. Unauthorized access outside working hours is one of the most consistent signals of improper use of information.